Good morning, Joanie. It is May 20th, 2014. I am Janine Pullman, and I am interviewing Joanie Weinstein this morning. And Joanie, I just hope you know that we're very excited that you've agreed to do this oral interview so that we can have all of your memories and your information about your life and your experiences in Dallas, not just for your family, but for the Jewish community, the archives, for the Dallas Jewish Historical Society. So to begin, why don't you start by telling us about your family, your parents, your grandparents, where you were brought up. Tell me all about it.
Okay. Well, I was born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I lived in Pittsburgh until we better stop because I'm just keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I lived in Pittsburgh until my husband and I went to Washington, D.C. for 2 years while he was in the Army. Then we moved to Dallas, Texas in 1969, and we have lived in Dallas since then and love Dallas. Dallas has always been our home since we moved here. I am very blessed. We are very blessed because my husband Shelley and I have 3 children who are married and 7 grandchildren, and they also live in Dallas. So we're very, very lucky. Going back to my birth in Pittsburgh, Shelley and I are both from Pittsburgh, and I'm an only child. He's an only child, so that's quite interesting. And we both grew up on a street called Beechwood Boulevard in Pittsburgh. And we grew up in a section of Pittsburgh called Squirrel Hill, which was definitely predominantly Jewish. And it was very interesting to go to an elementary school where there was only one person in your whole class that was not Jewish. So not quite what life is like in Dallas, Texas, anyhow. But Shelley and I met in high school, and we definitely were childhood sweethearts. And I knew at the age of 17, believe it or not, we were going to get married. And Shelley was in college then and was going to go to medical school. So I went through high school in 3.5 years and college in 3 years so that we could get married and I could support him while he was in medical school. And he's an obstetrician gynecologist and semi-retired right now. And we have been very fortunate to have moved to Dallas and had a wonderful life here. My parents who are deceased, my mother was born and raised in Chicago, and my dad was born and raised, he was born in Poland and moved to the United States, to Chicago, when he was 3 years old. And as I said before, I'm an only child, so I'm thrilled to death to have 3 children with 7 grandchildren, and they're all here.
So what did you do after you graduated? You said you had told me earlier you went into teaching. Where were you teaching, and where was Shelley at school?
I taught in Pittsburgh. I was a first grade teacher, and until I had our daughter Ellen. And Shelley went to Washington Jefferson College, which is outside of Pittsburgh, and then went to the University of Pittsburgh Medical School and the University of Pittsburgh's Women's Hospital, which is called McGee Women's Hospital, and that's where he did all of his training, his residency. And after that, 2 years in the Army, and then we came to Dallas, and he's been in practice in Dallas since then. Also has been very active in teaching, which is a love of his. He enjoys teaching gynecology very much.
So what year did you move to Dallas?
We moved in 1969.
And what was Dallas like when you got here?
Oh, that's a great question. You know, when we moved to Dallas, we hardly knew a soul. We just knew the 2 other doctors and their families that Shelley went into practice with. And we were told not to look at anything past LBJ Freeway because that would be, you know, no one lives past LBJ Freeway in 1969, very few people. And you know, that would be a major commute for him because he practiced at Presbyterian Hospital on Walnut Hill Lane and Central Expressway. So think about that, and think about what Dallas, Texas is like now, where, you know, my goodness, if you live in Plano, you're still close in. The other thing that was so interesting about moving to Dallas is that, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in an area where everyone was Jewish, and if you weren't Jewish, you're kind of the exception. And Pittsburgh still is pretty much the same way. Squirrel Hill is still the area in Pittsburgh where most Jewish people live. And to come to Dallas where it's not quite like that, and which is not to say that it's good or bad, it's just, it was totally different. The thing that I really remember the most is we moved to Dallas in '69, and I believe it was 1970 that the Federation had a study, a demographic study of how many Jewish people were living in Dallas at that time, and they determined it was around 20,000 Jewish people. And I believe now it's like 70,000 Jewish people from the most recent study. So you can see the difference, not only in the number of Jewish people in Dallas, but also the population of Dallas has grown tremendously.
So did you immediately get involved with the Federation, or did you join a synagogue? What steps did you take?
Great questions. We moved to Dallas in June, and I wanted, I was very familiar with the Jewish Community Center in Pittsburgh, and even worked there part-time when I was in college and in high school. And so one of the first things we did when we came to Dallas was locate the Jewish Community Center in Dallas, which was not that far from where we bought a house. And my first year in Dallas, I taught preschool at the JCC, 3 days a week, 3-year-old children, which was terrific. And then shortly after that, I had our third child, Michael, who is the native Texan. And but I became involved as a layperson with the center, and became very familiar with the staff, and it was a wonderful entree into meeting people. I think when you move to a new city and you have young children, that's wonderful, because then you meet the parents of the children, and getting involved in a community, and whether it's the center or the Federation or Jewish Family Service, it's a wonderful way to meet other people and also become part of the community. So anyhow, that happened, and as I said, I was involved in the JCC as a layperson, and the woman who had been the director of the preschool at the JCC, Jeanette Israel, for many, many years, retired, and they offered me the position of preschool director. And at that time, I really did not want to work full-time, but I liked the idea of working part-time. So I ended up doing something, this is 1974, so you realize how advanced this was. We job shared. Hilda Lynn and I worked together as preschool directors, and did that to a point where she really wanted to work part-time. And I then left that position as preschool director and became the children's youth director. And from that, I also became the membership director, and eventually the assistant director of the J. And I was the assistant director when I retired the first time.
Do you remember the names of all your directors?
Yes, there were only a few. Ernie Siegel was the director of the JCC when I first began to work at the J. And he left the center to make Aliyah in Israel. And then Harry Rosen became the director of the center. And after that, Bob Weiss became the director for a short period of time, and then Karen Stern. And after Karen left, I was the acting director after my retirement for about 8 months, and then Jay Jacobs became the director. And right now, Artie Allen is the director. And Artie was the assistant director under Jay. He was the Maccabi director, and he's the current director, and he's done an incredible job. He's great.
So how did working at the J impact your family?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. My whole family was very involved in the center. And what a wonderful place to work, a place where you want to be anyhow. And my children were very involved in all the activities at the J, from camps to athletics. It was just part of our lives, and it was just a wonderful place for my children to grow up and, you know, be part of my life as well at the center.
In terms of your parents and your current family, were there any, since you left Pittsburgh, were there any traditions or anything special that you had as a family that you then brought to Dallas, or did you begin your new traditions for your family?
We had a very interesting experience. My life, I should say. My husband and I mentioned before, are both only children. And when we moved to Dallas in 1969, Shelley's father moved with us. His mother had passed away shortly before that, and it was important for my father-in-law to come and be with us. And he did live with us for 4 years, and then he met a wonderful woman who we just adored. Her name was Joanie Weinstein. And they married for over 25 years before she passed away. So we had my father-in-law living with us. My parents were still in Pittsburgh, but then eventually they moved to Dallas as well. So Pittsburgh became our home and became their home as well. My mother was quite an incredible woman. She I think a lot of my feelings about Jewish organizations and doing what you can for the community came from her. She was very involved in Pittsburgh as president of many organizations. In Pittsburgh, they had something a little different than in Dallas. They have a president's organization where everyone, male or female, who's president of a Jewish organization is involved in that. And she was the president of the presidents, so she was pretty special. And my dad was also involved in the community.
It sounds like she was a wonderful role model.
She was a wonderful role model. She certainly was. And my mother-in-law, who was involved here at the center here. She was president of the Yes Club, the Young Energetic Seniors. And she was just a woman who was adored in this community. If you knew Anna, I mean, you just loved her because she was that kind of a person. And my children to this day still talk about how incredible she was and how fortunate we were to have in our lives.
So do you think that the experiences that you had from the beginning in Dallas, do you think that it impacted your kids in a way to get them involved? Or do you think they always had it in them?
Well, you don't really know. But I will tell you one story that this is really interesting. We had just moved to Dallas, and we moved in early June. And I wanted my children to have swimming lessons. And so a woman that I met by the name of Janice Sweet said to me, there's this man who teaches at his pool, and his name is Robbie Campbell. And so that would be a good choice for you. So I'll never forget taking the kids to Robbie Campbell and sitting next to Janice, and she's telling me about Federation. And I think Janice and I've told this to her, she made a real impact in my life then and later on as well. Because of Janice, I did become involved in Federation and worked at campaigns, in the younger set group, and then later on, and I still have a commitment involvement as to Federation as well.
Did you have any other organizations in the community that you were involved in?
Well, besides being involved in Federation and the JCC, when the children were in BBYO, I was also involved in BBYO as well.
Any other specific memories you have of Dallas over the years that were important to you or that guided you in any way?
Well, we're members of Congregation Cherith Israel, and that's been an important part of our lives. My children also all belong to Cherith Israel, and we have watched, my husband and I have watched our children grow in the Dallas area, and they all went away to college and came back. Our youngest son Michael moved to New York after college, and we thought, this is probably it. We're not going to get 3 out of 3, we're only going to get 2 out of 3, but he did come back. And so living in Dallas has just been a very fortunate thing for all of us. And what makes it even better, of course, is that our whole family is here. We have 7 grandchildren, and we're in ages from 6 to 17. And they are all involved at the J. And my son's son-in-law and my daughter and daughter-in-laws are all active in the Jewish community. And I can't speak for my daughter-in-laws, but I'd like to think that for my daughter and 2 sons, that the environment that they were raised in had an impact on them, and that's one of the reasons why they are involved in the community as well.
Are there any special stories that you would like the kids to know or to remember, or the community to know, that maybe most of us wouldn't know?
Well, I'm not sure if this is the question that you're asking, but I'm going to tell you this story anyhow. At the time that I was working, and I was working full-time, we're talking about in the late 70s on. And at that time, there weren't very many women who worked full-time. And I actually had a woman who happened to be in Pittsburgh, and it had no connection with my growing up there. It just happened to be where she worked and who she was. And her name, I still remember her name, Anita Lopatin. And Anita Lopatin was the first woman to become an assistant director of a JCC, and it was the one in Pittsburgh. And at that time, A, women did not work full-time professionally. It was very rare. And B, positions like that were always filled with men. So I will always remember Anita, not only because she was, the first to become an assistant director, because of the warmth and the way she treated other people. She was an outstanding role model for anyone. And then the other thing I remember is being on a panel here at the JCC, and I don't remember what the topic was, but I was invited to be on this panel, and it wasn't for a center organization. It was Hadassah or B'nai B'rith, and I've always been a member of Hadassah, B'nai B'rith, and council as well, and I volunteered there too. But anyhow, I remember being on this panel, and there were 3 women on the panel who were stay-at-home moms, and then there was me, and they kept asking me, well, a lot of questions like, how do you feel that you're not, you're working full-time? And it was really an interesting event for me, because it gave me pause to think even more about the meaning that it had for not just me and my husband, but for my children. And I've spoken with my children since then about what was it like to have a mom who worked full-time. And of course, maybe they didn't want to hurt my feelings, but that, you know, they all felt that especially having a mother worked in the Jewish community, was very, very positive for them. And, you know, when your children see you help others, which working the JCC, it's what you do. I mean, you are helping others in one way or another. And for me, it was everything from doing all the scholarships for camp and preschool and membership, and doing fundraising to help people who can't afford to be members or you know, need help with other kinds of assistance. One of the things that I will always remember is, and Janine, I know you do too, is when we had the influx of Soviets, our new Americans, and what an impact that was, and to be involved with that with my children as well, and to welcome them and to help them. To this day, there are still people I will see who will remember the center, and every once in a while someone will remember me. You're the person. No, I wasn't the person, it was the center.
What would you say that you're most proud of in your family life, in your career, however? It's okay.
It's not good.
It's okay. She'll
get rid of it. Promise.
Deborah, she wants this deleted.
Deborah, if you leave this on, I'll never forgive you. And she knows me, and I won't. You're gonna cry.
Would you just want to skip it and just?
No, I'll answer it eventually.
Okay.
We have lots of time, right?
We have plenty of time.
Okay. Well.
I feel like Barbara Walters.
Actually, that's one of the things that she said she can make people cry.
Right.
So, Janine, now that you made me cry. Okay, well, I'm most proud of course, my children. I'm not going to get through this without crying.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm most proud of my children. They've grown up to be wonderful people, and as I said earlier, they're all involved in the community, in the Jewish community, in the general community. They're wonderful parents. They're involved so much in their children's activities, and they're raising 7 absolutely adorable, delicious, wonderful people. And that's you know, my pride is my family, without a doubt.
Is there anything you would like to add that we haven't covered?
No, I've just been a very fortunate person. Very fortunate to have the career in the community that I've had, to move to Dallas in the beginning. And I should even back up and say most fortunate thing is that I married my husband. And, you know, and how lucky we are. In June, we will be married 54 years in June.
How nice.
And it's wonderful. And, you know, it's wonderful to have a partner. And as I said earlier, you know, I was someone who worked full-time, and I had a husband who understood and not only was a partner with me, but understood, you know, why I wanted to work in the community. And there were certainly times when I had night meetings and weekend meetings, and he was always there for me. So I've been very lucky personally, and very lucky with my family. I'll tell you one little story, because anyone who was involved at the JCC during this time will remember this. We had, my husband and I and our kids had both grandparents living with us at one time. And they're both Sams. Unfortunately, they're both deceased, but they're both Sams, and they were buddies. They were incredible. It was almost like, first of all, we were so fortunate to have them and to have them with us, and for children to see the joy of having your grandparents living with you and sharing with you. And they were great. And they both loved the center, and every day they would come to the center, and we were very fortunate to have that as part of our lives, and for our children to see that as well.
Thank you, Joanie. I know that the community is better from the years that you were involved.
We're both good.
We'll both cry. It was great, and I appreciate you taking the time to do this. Thank you.
Thank you. And you will edit my tears.
Yes.
And Deborah, if you don't, I'll never forget you, and I'll come get you.